Welcome to the Candle Business Coach Podcast, a show about the craft of candle making and small business. I'm your host, Kirsty Allen, and I'm a candle maker, mum of three, and kindness advocator. Join me as I dive into all things candles and small business and deliver advice and tips to you in episodes every Tuesday and Friday. Are you on the list to get my daily motivation emails? Every day I'll send you a message that is designed to help keep you focused on taking action toward your goals. Sign up using the link in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by my free ebook, The Candle Business Marketing Kickstarter Kit. Inside this free ebook, you'll learn to identify your blocks of time to dedicate to your candle business. Plus, there are several tips and tricks for re-engaging past customers and attracting new customers into your business so you can grow your business and reach your goals. Check out the link in the show notes for your copy. Welcome back to the podcast, my friend. Today we have another candle maker conversation, and this time I'm chatting with Jackie from Cavendish Avenue. Jackie, would you like to say hello to the listeners?
Yeah, hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Jackie.
Now, how did you get started with candle making?
Yeah, to be honest, my small business kind of grew out of a love, obviously a love of candles, as everyone kind of, starts to talk about, but I actually was selling tea back from 2017, upwards to 2021. And I was obviously having so much fun kind of creating the tea blends, but I found that there was not that much control, I guess, over tea, because obviously I wasn't growing the tea myself. I wasn't adding all of the different additions and flavors myself. And so I was kind of inspired by the flavors that I was having in my tea, and I just decided to try some candle making. I was seeing some videos online. I obviously love candles. So I ended up making a couple of candles to kind of complement the scents the flavors of my tea. The candles ended up selling stupidly well compared to the tea that was selling. And so eventually I just ended up, phasing out the tea in itself and going from my old business name to what is now Cavendish Avenue.
I love that. And I love that you've had that beautiful progression and evolution from being in the marketplace and selling products, then transitioning that into your passion of selling candles and making candles. So, that's a really awesome. I haven't had any tea makers on before. So that's really cool. So tell us a little bit about Cavendish Avenue, like the origin story, the meaning behind the name.
Yeah, sure. So Cavendish Avenue started back in 2021. We're actually coming up to our second birthday at the end of this month. So Cavendish Avenue itself, though, if you're not familiar with the name itself, it's as a street name in a really leafy kind of North London area of St John's Wood. It's a few streets away from Abbey Road Studios, if that kind of rings a bell for anyone. But ultimately Cavendish Avenue is where Sir Paul McCartney owns his home and where he kind of lived during the Beatles years. And myself and my dad are really, really big Beatles fans. We've been to Cavendish Avenue so many times now. We've been so not lucky enough to meet Paul, but, lucky enough to visit and just have so many memories. And I just think ultimately, Cavendish Avenue has kind of, our tagline is curators of cozy, and nostalgia is so deeply intertwined with that. And I just feel like ultimately, everyone's got memories that eventually turn into stories. And we always say, we've got the blends that tell those stories best. And ultimately, that's what I would try and capture in all the different signature scents that we've got. We've got 7 at the minute, but they're all curated and blended to kind of bring forward memories and make people feel really cozy and kind of, just feel as though they, are kind of safe and comforted with all these scents. And ultimately, people build their own memories on top of these scents. So obviously I've created these 7 signature scents based on my own memory and, some universal kind of, we've got our Athena's gift candle, which is more universally, culturally and, more earthy. It's based on my Greek heritage, which a lot of people can share that kind of, heritage and that family connection. I just love the idea that people end up taking these candle scents and end up, building their own memories to them and their own stories and, actually making memories while these candles are burning in the background. And it always just, when they burn the candle, it just reminds them of that time of their life. So that's kind of the basis of Cavendish Avenue and why we started. And we've kind of grown from there, really. Started just making a few candles and wax melts here and there. And now we've also expanded into facial oil and a face mask. And yeah, hopefully at the end of the year, something a little bit more exciting too, which will be fun.
Ooh, a bit of a tease there as to something coming. That's incredible. I always love hearing the stories behind the names of their candle business and the origin of where it comes from and what it means. And I love that you're so passionate about Cavendish Avenue as a place, but also as a sentimental experience that you've been able to go on with your dad and just create this business based on those memories and those experiences.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering though, when you first started your business, what was the process like for you? Did you find it overwhelming? Was it a natural transition from the tea business? Like, how did you find that first process?
It was probably quite gradual because I was selling tea primarily at the time. It was something that I was able to kind of dip my toe in, and, if it didn't work, something else was already working. But I actually found, I was just making a few test candles, some jar candles here and there, and they were completely different. They used to have additives on top. Tea, I actually used to put the tea on top before the candle set. But yeah, it was more, trial and error. I'd obviously seen quite a few videos online. I think this was probably just before the whole TikTok candle making craze kind of kicked in. And so there probably wasn't too much there, but I was definitely following some people on Instagram. Obviously, candles to me, scent really sets the tone for your day. And so I was really interested in exploring that. And so I started just with 2 different scents, both based on those teas that I was telling you earlier. And from there, it was just, trial with 1 mold. I actually originally kind of started thinking I'll make a whole lot of pillar candles and shaped candles. That was kind of the trend at the time. But now I've kind of pared that back quite a lot and focusing a lot on our jar candles and our wax melts, because ultimately they're the ones that our customers are really interested in. And they also, give you a bit more bang for your buck. I think the other ones are so beautiful, but they're not, I've had a few trials and errors with the pillar candles. And I just want to make sure that, bit of a perfectionist, I want to make sure that every single candle is perfect. And I ended up, making and remaking these candles over and over again because there were just slight imperfections with unmolding or bubbles here and there. And it just wasn't, it just becomes quite difficult. So I started with those 2 candle scents, as I said, and eventually, I was just selling online and through Instagram and on my website, and eventually it just took off. So I said, okay, done. And I started really researching into it. Quite lucky. I've got a candle supplier quite close, like a supply shop quite close to where I live. And so I was able to get a lot of information from them, trial and error, and it wasn't, costing so much with shipping and distribution. So it was mostly trial and error, but eventually when I actually did see the kind of opportunity there to sell candles rather than tea, it was full steam ahead, really.
I love that. It's often when we follow those nudges and sparks from, in our heart that lead us into the next level version of ourselves.
Yeah, for sure.
And by having, being blessed to have a supplier close by and being able to ask those questions in person, it makes such a difference. And particularly during COVID, when it was impossible to go places. We had to think outside the box, or we had to, find our products online. And I feel like there's so many opportunities that you can take up when you're in person with a supplier. So did you find that many, like the questions you were asking, were of more of a basic level, or were they more advanced?
I think at the beginning, and I think I kind of, I've heard lots of episodes of your podcast, and a lot of people say this, but, people just think it's very simple to make candles, melt wax, add fragrance oil and get going. But ultimately, so those kind of basic questions about, what fragrance load I should be using, and a lot of research into what sort of wax I should be going with, because I was kind of toying up between beeswax and soy wax. We ended up going with soy wax. But those kind of questions I found got me started. But it was until I kind of actually started working on those pillar candles, for instance. I remember I got a wholesale order in the first winter of Cavendish Avenue, and I ended up remaking those candles so many times. I did not realize the effect of temperature. And it was so crucial. And it's one of those things that you can't control. All those basic questions, fragrance load and wick size and all those sort of things were the easy things to just tick off going, yep, learnt it, done.
Yes.
But temperature just threw me. I wasn't fully prepared for it. So those sort of things actually became really good once I started. So that was probably 3 or 4 months in, and had made a few friends on Instagram in the candle business. And we were able to kind of talk each other through them, and yeah, just find out what works for everyone, really.
Yeah, and that's right. Like, I know that in the Facebook groups, so many people ask, what's the best wax? What's the best wick type? But even if every single person, and especially when every single person responds, the answers are so varied because our experiences are different. As you say, the temperature, the weather, the humidity, that all plays into effect. So where you live can dictate what sort of candles you can make to the best of your ability as well. So it's not just picking one wax, picking one wick and a couple of fragrance oils, and then off you go, like you mentioned. So yeah, it's interesting when you jump into the Facebook groups and you ask for advice, the type of responses you can get can be quite varied, which can then make the process a bit more overwhelming, which can deter a lot of people as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So when thinking about running your business and working full-time as well, how do you complete all the tasks that you need to do?
Definitely a bit of a struggle. I guess it does depend. And I think, my full-time job in itself ebbs and flows throughout the month with different deliverables required, etc. So I'm quite lucky. I'm a very early riser. If I have to get up at 5 or 5:30 to make candles in the morning, that doesn't bother me at all. I'm also quite lucky. I work from home the majority of the week. So yeah, in terms of a typical day, for instance, I've got a market coming up tomorrow. And typically I would, take off the Friday beforehand just to make sure that I've got everything sorted and, everything's prepared. But this week I just wasn't able to. So, I've been getting up really early in the morning just to finish making candles, running, labeling things, prepping things, packing things, getting stock lists and stock take ready, etc. And ultimately, after work as well, it kind of just becomes this, hustle really at times, depending on what's going on, obviously, with Cavendish Avenue and with work itself. I find, if I've got a lot of orders, I do tend to take the weekend. I think the weekend just to bulk make, whatever orders I've got to make. And I'm quite lucky. Like, obviously, as I was speaking to you about temperature, I find summer's actually quite easy to make candles. So I tend to make the majority, just bulk make a whole lot of all my scents, just to have them ready for orders. So I tend to pack orders over the weekend. But if I've got a market or something like that, definitely take time throughout the week. And also obviously social media, prepping and planning social media, reaching out to wholesalers, that all just becomes, after your 9 to 5 really.
Yes, that's right. I mean, you can only do so much during your lunch break at work. Exactly. It definitely has to spill over into your personal time. But when it's your passion and when it's your dream business that you're working on, it doesn't feel like work most of the time. I mean, you can be tired and, as you say, get up early and put in the hours, but it's not something that takes away from your life. It very much adds to it, and it becomes this obsession almost, where you're creating the candles, you're creating the products, but then you're creating the relationship with the customers, you're building your profile on social media, like you said, and as it grows and grows, you just get more excited and more motivated by it until you find that tipping point where you can reduce your hours in your paid employment and go full steam ahead in your side hustle, which will hopefully become more than that if that's what the listeners are aiming for. So everyone's goals are a little bit different, but I love how you start business thinking, I'm going to have so much free time and I'm going to earn all this money. And you do reach that point eventually, but there's very much from the beginning, you are juggling everything, and trying to balance it all is certainly a skill that takes a while to master.
Yeah, definitely. And ultimately, like, if it did become so hard and you really weren't enjoying it, you just wouldn't do it. And so that, I guess becomes a testament to anyone who's still, working outside of hours and, taking up free times and, it obviously speaks to your passion about the work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always the easy way out of not pursuing your dreams and, numbing yourself by just scrolling social media or watching Netflix for hours, or just shutting off those sparks and those desires in your heart. But when you start to put in the hours, and especially when you start to see results, it makes such a difference, and it keeps you motivated as well, especially during those challenging times. So what is one of your biggest wins in your business?
One of my biggest wins to date is definitely getting into shops. I think wholesale's always been, I don't know whether it's kind of perceived legitimacy for my business or not, but I definitely, that's absolutely been number one goal since I started. And it's definitely something that I've been reaching out to people for. And, I'm lucky enough to have a number of stockists now in New South Wales and Victoria. But that first stockist, she really, took a chance on me. She was a local business, local homeware store, and who really loves supporting other local creators. And she's ended up being such a huge support for the business and really gave me the confidence to kind of reach out. It was obviously cold calling. I just walked in one day and said, hey, here's my business. Here are my candles. Would you like a sample? We can have a chat about it more. And yeah, ultimately that really did push me to be able to make those kind of calls over and over again until, I have a fairly good, wholesale base. I find ultimately, because I'm trying to do this on top of my full-time job, sometimes wholesale is just a really great way to be able to bulk out a whole lot of orders and, keep cash flow coming in. And also be able to get a whole lot of exposure to people who might not see me either online or else really want to actually smell the product before they buy, because obviously it's very difficult to kind of understand scent without having smelt it yourself.
Yes.
There's all beautiful words and fragrance notes that you can kind of include, but ultimately some people, it does take that little nudge towards actually, this is actually what it smells like. And that's something that, a physical store gives that you just can't do online.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And it's interesting because in my conversations with many candle makers, they want to pursue wholesale, but it's the thought of going into a store and asking to speak to the owner that can be so, unfortunately, off-putting and so nerve-wracking that they basically shut down an avenue of sales that they could be making because of the mindset struggles that they might be experiencing. So the fact that you did that, went through the process and secured your first wholesaler, which has now given you the confidence and given you the courage to continue that path, has led to a financial stream of a financial win that you wouldn't have had otherwise if you hadn't taken that first step.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it can be quite hard. I'm quite an introvert, so it's definitely a little bit daunting to do. But once they actually, engage with you, and ultimately you just have to understand that if people are rejecting you or, it's nothing personal, or likely it's nothing personal about your product either. Ultimately, it's just, they're overstocked on candles, or it's just not a direction they want to go into. So yeah, it's just going in with that mindset and knowing that, you just have to get up and try again. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, as you say, it's not personal. There are so many factors at play as to whether a stockist could take you on as a client. And when you take away it's so easy to say, but it's hard to put into practice. But if you are able to sort of separate yourself from the outcome and just go in with, what's the best that could happen? If it goes ahead, great. If not, that's fine. There are other stockists I can try. You can enjoy the process so much more rather than getting caught up in those mindset hurdles and those challenges that unfortunately so many people experience.
Mm.
What sort of goals do you have for your business? Where do you see yourself in 12 months and 5 years?
In 12 months, I definitely, actually getting on a podcast was one of my goals. So
well, tick that off the list.
Pretty exciting. Yeah, definitely. I definitely want to have, my plan for the next 12 months is definitely to get more physical exposure. So I'm definitely getting into more market stalls. We held one at the end of last year and we've got one tomorrow and a few coming up. So yeah, it's just kind of connecting with those customers on, a one-to-one basis. The market that I ended up going to last year was so good to talk to people and kind of really understand their scent preferences. Because, I've obviously got my preferences and other people have theirs. And it's just interesting to know, maybe even to understand, where the gaps are in my fragrances and just understand what people are actually looking for. And, to get the feedback directly from customers when they're smelling the candles or purchasing it was just something that makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside, really. It was a really good experience. And so I'm definitely trying to do more market stalls and also really just grow my wholesale portfolio, really. I want to make sure, ideally, I'd love to be in every state and territory in Australia. That would be really cool to get done. And I think it is doable. Obviously, the candle market's quite saturated. And so comes back to that whole rejection and just trial and error with different types of businesses and, reaching out. But ultimately, I'd really love that. And I'd really love to grow my organic media coverage. I think it would be really good for the business and really good exposure if we were to get some organic media out.
Yes, definitely. And being on a podcast like this certainly helps.
Yeah, definitely.
So I just wanted to touch on something you said with the wholesale path, in that it's it's a profitable stream, but some people are afraid that because they're not taking as much profit that they, as opposed to retail, that they sort of write it off as not even being worth their time and effort. But what you said earlier is that you get exposure to customers that wouldn't have experienced your candles or wouldn't have seen your brand in perhaps on social media or at a market if they're not if they don't go to markets. But particularly when you blend your fragrances in your candles or in your wax melts, like you say, you can write the most description of your products, but sometimes they'll see a word or two in the notes or in the description itself and think that it's going to smell that particular way, and then they won't even consider purchasing it because they think, oh no, I don't like that scent, I'm not going to purchase that candle or look for something else. But funnily enough, when you go to the markets and you experience your customers smelling your products, and sometimes they'll say, oh, what's actually in this one? And then you tell them, and the look of surprise on their face because they thought that if they'd heard the description first, they wouldn't like the scent, but then they smell it and they actually do. So being able to explore wholesale and markets are huge avenues where you can really boost your brand awareness. And I feel like so many of the candle makers I speak to just want to sell online, but it's like you're missing 2/3 of the pie. Like if you don't at least give it a go and see if it will be something that you will find success with.
Yeah. And also it's kind of, especially if you build quite a good relationship with the owner of the store, for example, they then become kind of advocates for your candles, and it almost becomes, or it really is more valuable than your own opinion on your candles. And ultimately it kind of gains trust with customers because ultimately it's not you yourself. Obviously I'm quite biased for my own business, but a store owner who has nothing to do with me other than stocking my candles, it's that kind of trust that they build with their customers that just extends to your own brand. And so I think it becomes almost like advocacy out in the open. And I found one really good thing to do with all the stores is also gift the store owners some candles of your own just so they can burn them in the shop. So that when people are kind of walking past, they're like, oh, what is that scent and things like that. And so that just kind of sparks up that conversation that then allows them to start talking about the candles and maybe make that sale.
Yeah, that's right. And then you've got a customer that's now purchased your candle, maybe not directly from you, but they will fall in love with your candle. And then when it's time to repurchase, they may go to your website or social media directly to make that secondary purchase.
Yeah.
Do you find that your weekly routine tends to change in terms of running the business?
Yes, I'd say only if we had some sort of thing, like for example, if I do have a bulk wholesale order, that does tend to take up, quite a bit of time. And so other things, for example, social media or blog post writing or, video recording and editing kind of takes a back seat. It also depends. So yeah, I'd say I'm fairly stable in terms of what activities I've got to do every week, except for when we've got something like a wholesale order, a market, maybe also, for example, our birthday coming up in 2 weeks, or, Christmas, all those kind of key events that just are dotted throughout the calendar that require a bit more effort than potentially, a normal week does in terms of, responding to customer queries and social media and packing orders and making orders. So yeah, I think I found, especially this year, I've definitely stepped up my game in terms of providing that kind of look ahead. So I've got a 12-month look ahead that just has those key dates and key activities scheduled in already, so that I'm able to kind of look back and go, okay, so say I'm doing this at the end of March, I need to have started planning for this in January latest, basically. It just kind of lets you look ahead and not get overwhelmed, because ultimately there are only so many hours in a day, and my full-time job's quite labor intensive, I'd say. It takes a lot of hours out of my week. So yeah, it's about making sure that you're not overwhelming yourself so that you can keep up that motivation and, you can get all the tasks that you need done to the best of your ability. Like ultimately you don't want to be putting something out that's subpar, especially when it's your brand,
Absolutely. And particularly when it comes to those big moments in the calendar, like whether it's Christmas or Mother's Day or Easter, for example, if you're not organised, several months in advance in terms of testing new fragrances and bringing new labels in and just making sure that the products you're creating are to the level and quality that you want to produce, you can run out of time so quickly. And as we know, time goes fast. We're already in mid-March of this year. And having that 12-month look ahead like you have, or having a calendar in place, taking a step back and actually working on the business as opposed to only working in the business.
Yeah, 100%.
Is something it's one of the puzzle pieces that many business owners I speak to seem to miss, and they wait until the suppliers email them to say what their new fragrances are for the upcoming season, and by then you've almost run out of time. And the other thing is, some of the candle makers I speak to don't always test their candles with new fragrances because they think, well, 8% is fine or 10% is fine, I'll just go with that and we'll be fine. But it comes down to what your morals are and your integrity in your business, and how you want to approach running your business reflects how you approach running your life in many ways as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is interesting about that fragrance, it comes back to that point about, candle making's easy, you just put the fragrance in, etc. But that's kind of why we've ended up currently only having 7 signature scents. And I'm only intending to add about 1 a year, just because it does, it is that detail, like ultimately a percentage or 2 of different fragrance oils. I don't tend to just, only in my snap bars sometimes, buy directly the fragrance oil from the supplier and use that only in one product. But our actual signature scents themselves are sometimes a combination of up to 5 or 6 different fragrance oils. And ultimately you really do need to check them and you really do need to test the variation in kind of percentages that you're using, because ultimately, like you were saying earlier, it just takes one fragrance note to be a little bit too empowering for a customer not to like that fragrance. Whereas if you have everything balanced, and that just is really trial and error ultimately.
When you start your candle business, there are so many things to consider and research along the way, especially when it comes to choosing the right suppliers. Long Story Short provides all your design and printing needs, from your logo and branding to designing and printing your product labels. The quality is exceptional, the customer service is amazing, and prices are very reasonable. They're the only label company I recommend, so check out their website or send them an email today to get started. hello@longstoryshortdesign.com.au.
What's your process when it comes to blending scents and deciding on what makes the cut? How do you decide that this particular combination of fragrances is a winning combination for you in your business?
Yeah, I think it's definitely my favorite part of the business, and unfortunately I've got too many ideas like I said, I don't want to have more than one signature fragrance brought into the fold a year, because ultimately they're meant to be signature collection. They're not meant to be here, there and everywhere, everything that you can put all in all at once. I kind of started my blending process with 2 fragrances in mind, and there were 2 that I've been thinking about even when I had the teas, trying to get those sort of flavors included. And they're our London Fog and our Notting Hill fragrances. Obviously you can see the London theme coming through, but ultimately, our tagline as curators of Cozy, I really wanted to make sure that we actually were doing more to kind of make our customers feel quite comforted. And so I started by using essential oils. So for example, our Notting Hill candle is a white tea and bergamot essential oil scented candle. And, I did that ultimately because bergamot, there's been a whole host of studies that have found that after just 15 minutes of exposure to bergamot oil, your dopamine increases by 17%. It increases your body's production of serotonin, decreases your cortisol. So those candles genuinely do make a difference to your, mindset, or they really do set the tone for your day. And ultimately, if you are feeling anxious, they can relieve some mild symptoms of anxiety. And then I kind of started, obviously those were 2, essential oils aren't for everyone, and they are quite distinctive scents and they are quite strong scents. I started going down the fragrance oil route and just kind of picking out things that would really change your day, or be able to kind of, be included in your, in your routine. So for example, it gets hot and there's, summer fragrance. I wanted a summer fragrance that really defined summer. And so I looked to, travels, and I ended up with our Aperol C candle, which is a neroli and ylang ylang scented candle. And it's just based on obviously an Aperol spritz and days out, lazing, long lunches, Italian coastlines and things like that. So it was just about making sure that ultimately I wanted those memories. When I smelt that candle, I wanted those memories to be brought front of mind. So it's all about kind of making sure that nostalgia and those stories really do fit into it. And if I smell the candle and I'm not transported to that place or that time, then it just doesn't make the cut ultimately.
Yes, I love that. I love that you're so driven about your vision for your business and what you want the customers to experience as well. Unfortunately, there are a lot of candle makers that I've seen where they just, they start off with 20 plus fragrances and just think, if I cast my net really wide, I'm bound to get lots of sales. Yeah. And at the same time, I'm going to price my candles really low so that I'm competitive. But then they're not even covering their costs and they wonder why they don't have a profitable business. Mm-hmm. Whereas with you, it's very, very intentional and deliberate in how you're operating. And your customers feel that. They know that if you're putting in the effort and creating a premium product that's impeccable quality, that's what they'll experience. They'll have the same, memory transportation as well, rather than, oh, look, it's just another vanilla candle on the market that smells like every other vanilla candle that I've ever smelt. So having that unique perspective, taking the time to blend different scents and really hone in on what your vision is truly admirable. So well done. I think it's incredible when people are so passionate about what they do, and it could be about anything, it doesn't have to be candle making, but just when you're passionate about what you do, it lights a fire in your belly and it spurs you on when you have those challenging moments, because you know that you're made for more and that you're wanting to create something and put something out into the world that's actually going to benefit other people. It's actually going to help people. And that is, truly inspiring.
Thank you. Yeah, that's absolutely I'm glad that comes across, because that's absolutely the intention.
Yes, definitely. So when things get tough, though, what gives you motivation? How do you stay on track when life gets in the way?
It's definitely difficult. I think ultimately it does become, I started it as a bit of a hobby, really. And so it was an escape at that time. And so, it is always something fun to do. And, my regular job is, quite difficult and numbers based, etc. So when you actually are able to kind of go into that creative field and really test yourself in a different way, it just takes the perspective. It changes your perspective completely, really. And I find that, it's always something that's soothing to do. I always just have to kind of, every morning I start the day and think, okay, what scent do I actually want to burn today? What's the kind of vibe for the day? And ultimately the fact that I can look through my own, collection of candles that, I've created myself is just, it inspires myself, really. Ultimately, it's something like I would never not want to have that. Yes. So ultimately, it's just the mindset. You're never going to be motivated all the time. You have to do the work. If you want it to succeed, ultimately, there are certain things that you just have to do and certain tasks, even if they're not fun, that you just have to get done, because ultimately it's all part of the bigger vision. If you want to be able to achieve, X, you have to do all of it. That kind of takes you there. So it's essentially just getting it done. Like it is ultimately, I am looking at it as a job. You don't like all the parts of your job. No one's ever going to like all the parts of your job, but ultimately you just have to get all of it done, because you're your own boss at this point and they're the deliverables that are required.
Absolutely. And discipline, like having the self-discipline, is something that's a skill that needs to be nurtured by a lot of us in a variety of different areas. But we think at times that business is meant to be really easy, and at times it is, but there are things that happen, there are challenges that come up both personally and professionally that are there to help us grow and develop and become the next level version of ourselves. So when things get tough, it's tempting just to switch off and say, I can't deal with this, or I don't want to deal with this. But it's when you push through and you break through those barriers and you give yourself a chance to learn and grow, that's how you become more successful. It's how you find more success with your business, when you actually keep pushing through despite the challenges.
Absolutely.
How would you define success?
I think ultimately it is, a bit cliche, but it is ultimately different to everyone. And I think success in terms of my business would be, kind of reaching that perceived legitimacy. I think there's definitely a level of imposter syndrome, that small businesses feel compared to, something that maybe has a bigger financial backing or, more opportunity from the get-go. Ultimately, you've got to carve out your own opportunity and work with what you've got. And so success to me would be, getting customer feedback that's saying, that they love the candles and they, they've gifted it to someone and they also loved it. It would be, going out to the markets and being able to have that kind of connection with people and actually talk to them. It was, probably one of the highlights of the year last year, to be able to do that. And ultimately just making sure that the candles that I'm putting out are something that I'm proud of, and the fragrances that we're putting out are something that means something to us and to our customers. And ultimately, yeah, it's just, creating that experience and making sure that our customers feel that. And, hearing that feedback is always the best part, obviously making sure that, well, once you hear the feedback, that you're actually doing something. So yeah, definitely customer focused for sure.
Yes, because our ego will tell us that we're doing a great job, but if we're not making sales or we're not getting those positive, testimonials and reviews, it's hard to know whether we are on the right path. And when we niche down and when we find our target audience and then work to create products that are what is actually wanted by the market, and then we get those testimonials and reviews, it just reaffirms, like you say, that we're on the right path, and you want to continue down that path because it's working and you're able to find success. But I love how your answer didn't revolve around a monetary figure. It wasn't about when I hit this particular goal, because sometimes people will externalize the definition of success when really I believe it's an internal factor. And when you act in integrity and you can look back on your journey and know that you've done everything that's in alignment with your values, that is success as well. It doesn't have to be a particular milestone. There's nothing wrong with saying that you have got a monetary goal that you're seeking, but when you do it for the right reasons, you find that, the universe will open up and provide more opportunities for you, because what you're doing is, it's good for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. And ultimately, if you wanted, or if monetary goals were the only, marker for success, you could be doing anything, right? Ultimately, we've gotten into candle making for a whole range of reasons.
Yes, yeah, passion, obsession, just candles are awesome. Like I'm a huge fan, obviously.
Yeah.
Do you have support around you in terms of your candle making journey?
Definitely support in terms of, my loved ones, making sure that, they're definitely supportive in terms of the goals and, always encouraging me to continue. My boyfriend always comes to the markets with me, which is always, big sacrifice of his weekend. But I'm very grateful for it, because ultimately it is just something that is probably very difficult to do alone. And, ultimately you do want to share these moments with people, because that's just, this is the foundation, and, eventually will be hopefully, much bigger and bigger and better. And ultimately these are the moments that kind of make that. Yeah. And I've definitely got people who are very encouraging around me, and who definitely support in terms of, spreading the word. Like I was talking about earlier, advocacy is just everything, and customer exposure. So yeah, I've definitely got a lot of support around me for that.
That's so good to hear. And it's interesting because often when we don't have as much support, it can be hard. Well, it's harder to continue down that path, because you need to have that network around you that's helping to keep you afloat when you have those challenging mindset moments. So yeah, it's refreshing to hear that you've got that support around you. But I am curious how you handle criticism, either from customers or just from your own mindset.
I find from customers a lot easier to take. I think I definitely feel the impartiality from them. So, if they are coming to me with critique, or, someone, I had one girl at one point, one of my customers kind of reached out on Instagram and said, I've just ordered this, I've ordered a mystery bar. I really like sweet scents. Can you please send a sweet scent? And I said, of course. And, I ended up sending a sweet scent. I think I ended up sending something like stroopwafel and tulips, which is quite a caramel based scent. And, she messaged back going, oh my God, I hate it. Like, I don't like bakery scents. I don't like, foodie kind of scents. So yeah, that was a bit, it was hard. And, we obviously talked it through, and kind of, I got a better understanding of what she likes in particular. She's quite a loyal customer. So yeah, I definitely find that I'm probably more willing to participate with customer critiques, because honestly that, they're obviously reaching out because of preferences, and, I'm creating products for them. But yeah, definitely struggle with my own mindset, and yeah, I'm definitely a perfectionist, and yeah, probably struggle with a bit of a negative mindset at times, and yeah, definitely kind of just beating myself up about little mistakes. If the candle top isn't perfectly smooth, or something's gone out a little late, yeah, I can definitely take a bit of a beating. So external criticism definitely much more preferred.
Isn't that interesting that we all have those moments where our minds aren't necessarily our best friends. And I mean, at the end of the day, our brain's trying to keep us safe. It's trying to keep us in our comfort zone and in the known. But when we receive outside criticism, it's almost like, okay, I can use that. Like you take it as feedback that you can improve and work on. But when it's your own mindset, it's almost like you kind of stay in the muddle of, oh, I don't know how to do this, or this wasn't perfect, and you can trip up so many people because they don't necessarily have the practice at working through those skills and separating themselves from their thoughts to be able to objectively look at them. So I'm curious to see the feedback from this episode, and I love when listeners message and share their thoughts and their stories, because it helps to just embrace that community that we're here building, and to know that different mindset struggles are experienced by so many of us is also reassuring that, you know, we're not alone in our journey, even though sometimes we do feel isolated.
Yeah, definitely.
How would you say you would transform and grow your business from now to the next level?
I think I definitely need to kind of step outside of my comfort zone. I think social media, you know, we've grown up with it now enough to kind of be quite comfortable on it, and, you know, quite good at kind of adding value in terms of Instagram and quite a few TikTok videos. You know what's expected, you know how things are going to perform. I think at this point, you know, that only gets you so far though. And at this point, it really is about kind of reaching for that exposure. Kind of, you know, I think at the end of the day, as daunting as it is, ultimately it's about reaching out to those store owners and, you know, reaching out to different markets to kind of get your hand in there, reaching out to different media publications to try and get some organic media or some work through. You know, I've had some good success with some micro influencers. So it's just about, you know, taking different steps, because ultimately, you know, I read a quote, you know, if you want to go somewhere you've never been, you've got to do things that you've never done. And ultimately those are the things that I have been lax on, you know, looking objectively at what I've done in the last 2 years. So yeah, making sure that I'm reaching out to different points in that kind of customer journey, and trying different things. So yeah, those are definitely, it's all about exposure at this point. I think exposure and growth. And, you know, I think I'm quite confident in my product range, and I'm quite confident in, you know, the customer feedback that I've gotten to date on the products. And so I think it's, you know, maintaining that level, or that, high standard, I guess, in terms of product, and then just being able to kind of reach out and get the confidence to just start something a little bit different, and, you know, start working towards something bigger and better ultimately.
Yes, which will lead you closer to your goals and your dream vision for your business. So what's something you can do today to help grow your business?
Yeah, something I can do today, it's something that I'm working on at the moment, is kind of a media kit, you know, doing some research into what good looks like in that sort of space, and what I can do to kind of leverage and add value and kind of, I guess, ultimately showcase value in as tantalizing a way that someone's going to want to pick it up and run with it. So that's something that I'm working on. And then it's just about really doing the research into what sort of publication would fit with my business, and how to kind of reach out and understand how to build those relationships, because ultimately they are the relationships that I've probably, you know, I've obviously built relationships with my customers and with micro influencers, like I said, and it's just that relationship that I've never really taken the next step towards. So it's definitely a focus at the moment.
What would you say is your biggest challenge in your business?
Biggest challenge, aside from time, because isn't time a big challenge for everyone? Yes. I definitely say getting more streamlined sales in terms of trying to get more consistent sales. Obviously you get quite big bursts when there's a wholesale order or you've got a market stall on, but just making sure that I've got those consistent sales. I find in our market at the moment, it's very easy. I found that it's been easier to get sales if I hold a sale, like put my products on discount, but it's not something that I tend to do as a strategy. I tend to hold 2 sales a year. So to kind of cut through the fat in terms of, you know, that market saturation and, you know, people who are offering their products for a lower price. Yeah, that's definitely a big challenge, because I do find that ultimately there are a whole lot of small businesses doing this at the moment, and they are quite saturated on social media, and it's just about kind of making noise without having to reduce or having to put out too many discounts, because also that kind of becomes saturated in itself. If you've got a sale every week, it doesn't become anything special. It doesn't become something that your customers look forward to or take advantage of.
They wait until the next sale because they know it's going to be a regular occurrence.
Yeah.
And that's another mindset struggle that many people have, or many candle makers have, is that they think it's a race to the bottom. If I have the lowest price product, I'll have more sales, but it's perceived value as well. If you have a cheap looking product with a cheap price tag, you're not going to attract the sort of customers that you might get. Some customers that come through, but if you want to build a sustainable business, you need to think long term, and you need to think like what a big business would think, rather than coming from a desperate mindset or a desperate place where you're putting out that sort of energy, because it won't reflect the sort of sales and the sort of quality that you want in your customers. So there's a lot of mindset hurdles that we need to overcome when it comes to businesses, particularly candle business being a product-based business. But it's about educating yourself along the way, listening to podcasts, reading books like business books, personal development books, and growing alongside your business as well.
And that kind of just reminds me really, like, the whole idea of cheap product at a cheap price. Ultimately, to think like a big business, you do also have to think a lot about branding. It's not something that, it's a work in progress, definitely, and it's not something that you can kind of have fully formed necessarily at the beginning of your business, but it's just about adding that perceived value and quality, and branding plays a part of it. It's not just a logo or colors, it's the full experience and the photography and the aesthetic and the tone of voice, etc. So that's something that we're always working on as well.
Yes, absolutely. Investing in our business, whether that's monetarily or with our time and energy, it's just a non-negotiable. You can't just take an ordinary photo and expect to make $50 a candle. You need to portray a story. You need to have that journey that you can take your customers on. And when we start to think more strategically, that's how we get more results faster.
Definitely.
Have you got email marketing in place?
Yes, though I probably don't use it as much as I definitely should do. But yes, email marketing in place. My only barrier really to using that, and it might be because of the platform that I use in terms of hosting my website, but I definitely don't like the aesthetic, or I don't feel that the aesthetic kind of matches the brand. And so I'm hesitant. I do tend to put out email marketing, when we've got a new launch going on, but I'm definitely self-aware that it's about building that consistency with your customers and that consistent communication. And it's definitely not something that I'm doing at the moment.
But something to work on as we all have different aspects of the business to work on. It's on the list.
It's on the list, yes.
It's a very long, growing list.
Yeah.
A list that we can never get done in one day, but we try. No. We definitely try. We could stay up until midnight, but we still wouldn't get it all done. And you especially don't want to be sending emails to your list at 11:30 at night. It doesn't look good for your brand. Just schedule it for the next morning.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've come to one of my favourite parts of the podcast, where I ask all my guests 3 questions relating to candles.
Yep.
So number 1, what is your favourite candle fragrance?
At the moment, my favourite candle is our Regent's Park candle. It's kind of completely rooted in nostalgia. Regent's Park's definitely my favourite place in London, and it's scented like rain for that beautiful, obviously the London weather, but also the beautiful lake that kind of goes around Regent's Park. It's got rose for that Queen Mary's tea rose garden. It's got elderflower and lemon, because when I was there last, found this tiny little cafe in there, and he was selling elderflower and lemon tea, and I just thought he was brilliant. He was, talking about all the different celebrities that came in and, come to get tea, and all the different gossip he had, and I just thought he was, so flamboyant and brilliant, and that it just sticks out, that scent and that flavour just sticks out in my mind. So at the moment, Regent's Park, especially if I'm feeling nostalgic.
Oh, I love that. That sounds like it would smell very lovely.
Thank you.
Question 2, what do you love most about candles?
I definitely love the way that they can completely change your mood. I find I tend to pick my candle scent based on my mood. Casual Friday, I tend to be burning out I Am the Walrus scent, which is like marshmallow and Fruit Loops, a bit more fun, a bit more chill. I definitely think that the way that it can A, trigger memory, and also B, just completely change the tone of your day. I think it sets the background of your day, and I think that's really cool.
Absolutely. They're so powerful, these little candles that we burn in the corner or in the middle of the house. They they can change your mood, they can change the vibe, and they bring people together in that cozy, comforting way. And number 3, what is one piece of advice you'd like to give to other candle makers during their journey?
I'd say definitely try and make something unique. Ultimately, like we've been talking about, the candle market is so saturated, especially in Australia at the minute. And, you don't want to be a copycat, but B, you do want to make your own mark on something. Otherwise, kind of, what's the point? I think if there are 50 of the same out there already, what value are you adding, and try and look for the value, even if it isn't scent based. It could be a new jar or a new shaped candle, or the way you're presenting it to your customers, or the story that's behind it. I think ultimately you need to have a point of difference. And that just helps you carve out your own identity in an otherwise saturated market.
Yes, and it's helpful, it's crucial and essential to know who your niche who your niche is, who your target audience is, and speak to them as if it's one person, as opposed to, trying to address everyone in one go and hoping for the best. You need to really narrow down on your messaging and your branding, and and you'll find sales will come a bit more easily that way.
100%, yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share about Cavendish Avenue with the listeners?
No, other than it's our second birthday in a couple of weeks, 31st of March. So you can definitely find us on Instagram, cavendish.ave. We'll be having something really fun come out in a couple of weeks. Something that I was hoping to come out based on our signature scents later this month. So it's just something fun. It's always fun to celebrate a milestone in the business. So I want to share that with our customers.
I love that. Love that so much. And happy birthday as well. It's a very exciting milestone. Second birthday. So you're in the terrible twos.
That's it.
So the toddler phase.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out.
Oh, too good. Thank you so much, Jackie, for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed our chat, and I know that the listeners will love and pick up so much wisdom and knowledge from your experience as a candle maker. These candle maker conversations are one of my favorite because it really helps to connect in our experiences as candle makers, and it helps that we don't feel so alone on our journey, because some people don't necessarily have other candle makers nearby, or even other business owners, small business owners nearby that we can speak to and connect to. So the fact that you reached out on Instagram and wanted to have a chat on the podcast, I truly appreciate, and I love our conversation. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks everyone for listening today. I hope this episode added value to your candle making journey. Check out the show notes for all the links mentioned throughout today's show, and please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks again for listening. Have a beautiful day.